How do you deal with a partner who's got an unhealthy diet? How do you have that conversation? Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations, where we truly believe when you communicate better, you live better. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and as always, I'm joined with Lucy. Lucy, welcome back to another exciting episode.
Yay to that, and yay to healthy eating, which has been my focus lately because my body seems to be like the canary in the mine. Anything that that might not be the healthiest, my body's reacting to it strongly.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's been a focus of mine for sure. What
Uh,
about you? And
I uh I love eating, and I am always on a quest to gain weight as much as possible. I think I hit 185 over the summer. So now I'm trying to get to 200. That's my goal, is to
Wow.
get to 200. So everybody always says, that's great. You can eat whatever you want. I can't always eat whatever I want. I have to eat healthy-ish, right? But
Mm,
um and now that we're talking about this, I wish we had our guest from last season on, Laura, who
yes.
does diet coaching. It would have
Yeah.
been great to have her on this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll have a part two and invite her back,
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
if she's willing. But either way, I think this is an interesting topic, for everybody, and this might not be a very long episode because it's interesting. There's two ways to think about this, right? Like, you are in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
your partner is eating unhealthily.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about this before we started when we were planning out this episode. If you are also eating unhealthy, in my mind, in our minds, it's a little bit easier to kind of address it. But what if
Yeah.
you're eating healthy already? You're already on top of things, you're tracking and you're doing all the right things, and your partner's not, and they just don't seem to
Mm-hmm.
care. So let's
Yeah.
go through the easy way first, because I think that'll be we can knock that one out.
Sounds good.
If we're both eating unhealthy and you want to address this, Lucy, like you got that canary chirping, you're like, uh-oh, how would you address it to me if we're both eating unhealthy?
So, do we role play or do we just say the principles?
Let's talk it out. Let's see what happens,
Okay,
and then we
so the
can role play if
principles.
we need to.
Okay. So I would first say, I would probably share my realizations. My body's really reacting, and this is impacting my energy. This is impacting how I can be with you, how I can show up in the relationship, how I can show up for housework
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
chores. If I'm tired, it's really everything is much harder. And then propose, what connect to the motivation of my favorite, how we would want to feel. How do you feel? What's your experience? Are you also feeling that you are not at your best shape or like energy during the day, during the week? If
I
so,
feel great.
yeah.
I feel great. No issues.
You feel great. Well, then it might be a little bit harder to get on the same page. So you already took one of my strategies away. So then it could be what would be a way we could work together on finding a way because I really need to change my eating. Do you want to be on board or not?
Yeah.
What's would you be willing to be on board with me on that
Yeah.
and really see because that would be healthier for us, for the kids. We can be here longer.
Yeah. 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 I would, the only thing I would add is you could also, if they're saying no, you could just say, listen, I just
Hmm.
need a support. I'd love an accountability partner. So somebody to do this with me so that I don't feel tempted. When you're eating fries or you're
True.
eating chips, I don't feel tempted. Like, I'd love some
Hmm.
help with this.
Yeah.
But that's,
True.
even though I threw you a wrench of saying, no, I don't think it's an issue at
No.
all. Right. That still at least works. That can work,
Yeah.
right? Like, I just need
Yeah.
it. I need help support in this. If you want to go eat out
Exactly.
healthy, go do it somewhere
Yeah.
else. In our house, can we try to eat healthy?
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you say no, I really want to eat this way, there could be yeah, exactly sharing, asking for support, accountability in that at
Right.
least. Or having, can you not buy the ice cream maybe? Because
Yeah. Can you just not
when
buy
I
the
get
ice cream?
stressed out, I
I'm just gonna go for
could
it.
pick a
Yeah.
different one.
So let's go to, in our minds, the harder one, the one where you are already eating healthy. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem to bother them, and they're just gonna keep eating unhealthy, and they don't seem to care.
Mm.
How do you want to start? What are you thinking about as you even approach this conversation?
I would say first empathy. rather than judgment.
Hmm.
Noticing our own, why do we even want to have the conversation? What is that really about?
Hmm.
Is it coming from the way the person looks? Let's say if they're overweight. I've had a client sharing her boyfriend is trying to have her, because of the way she looks. So that's one situation. Is it because of the health concerns? Especially let's say if they have already diabetes and yet they are
Mm.
keeping eating a lot of sugary foods, that
Yeah.
could be a real health concern with real tangible consequences for
Right.
everybody. And so is that the what is really the reason that you want to have the conversation? What is it really
That's
that's bothering
yeah.
you?
Hmm.
So starting with ourselves.
That I think that's where I would have started too, is getting a clear sense of why this is important to you. Is it
Mhm.
you are concerned about their health and their long-term health, or are you just concerned about the way they look? Maybe it's a little more superficial. That's fine if that's a reason. It'll probably be a lot harder to move the needle forward because that's probably not a big deal to them. It's a little touchy depending on how if you're not in a long-term relationship with them yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, why is it? What's the impact it's having that's really difficult? That could be, it will only get worse if they don't make changes.
Yeah. So one of the impacts, if it's health related, they won't be healthy. They will have health challenges, and that has an impact on everybody in the family. Plus, in the
Yeah,
US, there's always a cost of that also with the health insurance, depending, let's say, what kind of medication they need. There are real health costs connected for a lot of people to health
right,
issues.
right.
That could be costly financially, could be costly emotionally, could cost them in their career because if they're constantly tired, and they're having health issues, there's less energy available for work, productivity,
Yeah,
performance can decrease.
right, right.
There's lots of consequences. Could be consequences for the relationships if, let's say, for the person is really important, and health is one of the key values for
Yeah,
one of the partners, and the other partner doesn't have health as a value, apparently.
right. Yeah, different misalignment of values. And
Mm-hmm.
I my background as a therapist, I've worked in behavioral medicine. I've done work around motivational interviewing, which is really about how do you build somebody's motivation. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of effort to build somebody's motivation to want to change. You
Yeah.
know, behavioral medicine is such a interesting topic because even when something's good for somebody, they may not do it,
Yep.
even if they know it, right? Like we all know people who smoke, they
Absolutely.
know it's bad for them. They're like, yeah, I know this is bad for me. I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yep.
People who do any other kind of drugs or drinking,
Yeah.
um, most people will know potato chips aren't healthy for you. French fries aren't good for you. People know that,
Yeah.
right? But it's hard, right? Even
It
in
is.
under the best of circumstances, right? Like think about any medication you've ever taken that's like a 10-day course, right? You ever taken those
Hmm.
Z packs of like
No.
if you have an infection, like it's like an
Oh.
antibiotic course. But essentially, if
Huh.
you get like some kind of infection, you can take an antibiotic course that's 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel better after like for 5 days. But they say, no, you have to keep taking
Take
it. You
the
cannot
yeah.
stop. But it's
Mm.
hard because after you feel better, it's hard to then continue doing the things you're supposed to be doing. Like,
Mm. Yes.
um, another thing like stretching. How many people
Oh.
exercise, but they don't stretch, even though we all know it's good for us. We all know it
Mhm.
will be good for us in the long term, but it's just hard
Yeah.
to do that because there's no like immediate tangible
Reward.
cause to do it.
Yes. That's possibly part of the survival brain that wants the immediate reward rather than looking at the long-term benefit.
Yeah.
Because even
So
smoking can somebody help release stress. And if they don't
that's
have
right.
any other way how to deal with stress, then of course they don't want to give it up.
That's right. Yeah.
For somebody that can be eating the foods. That's the only time I can be happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. If they're solving some emotional issue, yeah,
Hmm.
that's absolutely right.
So it's really it can be really difficult issue to solve. But in this difficult conversation, what would be some strategies? What do we even want to solve?
I would keep the mindset that this is never going to be solved in one conversation. Sorry,
That's a good
let me
mindset.
rephrase that. It's very hard to solve it in one conversation. You might,
Yes,
maybe you will, maybe they've already been thinking about it, even better.
true. Yes.
But I guess I want to introduce the idea of the stages of change, and that would be helpful to think about this. There's
Hmm.
the only ones that are important for this kind of situation are pre-contemplation, contemplation, and then those are the main two I want to focus on,
Yeah.
because pre-contemplation is you're in the mode of I don't even think there needs to be a change. Nothing even needs to be a change, right?
Hmm.
So that you're not even thinking about change. Contemplation is where you are thinking there might be a need to
Yeah.
change, but I'm not ready to commit to it for whatever reason,
Hmm.
emotional, psychological,
Yeah.
just a habit, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you're talking to somebody in the pre-contemplation phase, you're not gonna. You need to really think through, get them into contemplation, even thinking that there should be a change in the first place.
Yeah.
If they're not even thinking there needs to be a change, then it's not
There's
even worth it. They're never going to say,
no.
okay, I'll do this. They might do it
True.
to placate you, but they're going to fall back real fast.
Yeah.
So, really thinking through, if you're going to have a conversation about this, you got to plan for it to take lots of conversations. And so, maybe the goal at the beginning is assessing where they are and figuring out, are they ready to even think about change and talk about the change, or are they even thinking there's not a problem in the first place? If not, then maybe if they're in pre-contemplation, then your goal should be, I just want to keep the lines of communication open about diet. We won't solve it today. I don't need you to change,
Yeah.
Lucy. I don't need you to change right now, but can we at least talk about our diet? Can we at least talk about kind of the food that we're doing? And not get, and
Yeah.
neither of us get defensive or upset about this. We'll just talk about like whether this food in general.
Hmm. That's a
Just
good
keep it
way.
open,
Oh,
right?
kind of again like the minimum viable when at least let's have a conversation. Let's start having conversations around this.
Right, right. And really what you're trying to do is, well, I'll tell you this, is what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a discrepancy as much as possible, so that they start moving into contemplation. They start thinking there is a problem. So you're starting to identify, like, they may think everything is good, but then you
Hmm.
just point out there are things that contradict that everything is going okay. So if they say, I've got no problems with my health, everything's been fine, right? But then all of a sudden they get out of breath out of, like, for a simple
Uh,
activity,
yes.
right? Or they start having more aches and pains.
Hmm.
And your goal is not to like point it out right away, like this is because of that. It's
Hmm.
really just starting to plant that seed in their head of there might be a connection. And the only way you can do that, if you're a partner in this, is you're going to
Hmm.
say, what do you think is causing that?
Mm.
So there's a pain, they're out of breath more often than normal. Like, Lucy, I notice you're out of breath more often. What's going on? Are you sick? It's like, no, I'm not sick. I don't know what's going on. I'm just more out of breath. You're just trying to create now plant those little seeds that kind of eventually grow into plant, like blossom into like full
Yeah.
blown doubts of like, why am I more out of breath?
So what I like about this approach, it's really more, it's a patient and it's strategic. Because if we just say you got to change, no, it's our
Yeah,
natural reaction. If somebody wants to change us, and most people say no, no, thank
right.
you, I'm good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and so this is what would be what not to do in that situation. Anyway, telling somebody you got to change or like we are
Ultimatums.
over.
Yeah. No
Hmm.
ultimatums. Yeah. I guess I'll say this, unless it really is causing danger, right? You don't want to put yourself in
Mm.
danger.
When it's really a boundary, or like this is
Right.
we get a
Right.
separate fridge.
Yeah. But most of the time, you're right. No ultimatums don't work most of the time.
Mm. Unless, let's say, it was the last time we've had conversations, we trying to work on this for a long time. Could be maybe before that. There's the conversation about what's an ultimatum versus a boundary.
Yeah. Right.
Um, because some people could say, "Don't threaten me." when we are just setting a boundary, but they're pushing against the boundary by saying, don't threaten me. What not, what else, what not to do? Should we look at also what not to do in that conversation?
Um, I think ultimatum is probably the biggest one. I think
Hmm.
blaming them as if it's their fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to say that we should excuse their behavior, right? Especially if, there might be some trauma there. Maybe not. Maybe they just love eating. They just have bad habits and they have no self control. Fine. Either
Hmm.
way, shame doesn't make people change, really,
Mm.
right? Shame just makes people feel more shame about it and they just feel more
True.
guilty about it. So it people change because they want to change. That's the
Mm.
only way people will change is if they want to. So making them feel bad about it doesn't necessarily work.
Makes sense. So it's almost being more loving rather than judgmental.
Yeah, absolutely.
And think, oh, do I have some area when we are trying to judge somebody else for not being perfect in that area? Do I have an area where I'm not perfect? And kind of having compassion both for ourselves and the other person.
Yeah. Although I might be wrong. I think that'd be a good question for our audience. Like, have you ever changed a habit because you felt shame or because somebody shamed you about it that you decided to change? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's plenty of people that do that, but let us know. Email us,
I like
put it in the
that too.
comments, but let us know if people do that.
Hmm. Have you had that conversation with your partner about their weight, their eating habits,
Yeah.
their health? Could be
Yeah.
often even with our parents
Right. It could be
and
with our
other
parents.
family
Yeah,
members.
as well.
Hmm.
And it's reasonable to say like I'm just concerned about your health.
Hmm.
Like that's okay to say it.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just saying this
Yeah.
because I'm just concerned about your health. It's your choice. I can't force you to do anything.
Yes.
I just want to make sure you're here, able to do
Hmm.
things with me or with if we have
Yeah.
kids with our kids, or I just
Hmm.
care about you. I just want you to be healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. And that comes from a loving space.
Right? All of it's coming from
There
love,
then.
right? As we're talking about, right? It's all about how do we come from a caring and loving place and not a judgmental or shaming or
Yeah.
blaming space.
And I would say again, you don't have to have the perfect words and the perfect moment to say that, as long as you start somehow with that right energy, with that right intention, which
Yeah,
is coming from the place of caring and love, not the judgment and shaming and guilt
right.
tripping.
And the guilt tripping. Yeah, yeah. Because I think, you want them to change. And maybe I'm wrong, but most people you don't want them to change just for you. And then for them to go back to those habits when you're not there.
True. Or it could turn into, well, I did this for you, so you need to do this now for me. So it's kind of
Right.
mutually guilt tripping and
Right. Right.
trading, which is
Yeah.
another level in the relationship. And it might not be that fulfilling rather than from really a space coming back to, like, I really care about
Yeah.
you, about your health. I want both of us to feel good.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're both wrong.
Could be.
Maybe most of the people that listen to this podcast are like, no, 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 I don't care about their health. I just want to manipulate them. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. I
It
want
is
them to change
possible.
just for me. I'm hoping not. I'm gonna assume the best in people that they care about their partner.
Yes.
But it is always possible, I suppose.
It is always there. There might be some people like that, for sure. We are all different, but they might not listen to our podcast. They might
Yeah,
listen to other things.
sure, sure. The last thing I want to add is just relieving yourself of the pressure of needing to change them. And because everybody makes their own decisions at the end of the day,
True.
and you can't force somebody to do something unless you tie them down and force feed them whatever, right? Then you can, I guess. But outside of that, people make their own decisions. They have their own free will, and it's important to separate yourself and not
Mm,
feel that responsibility for how they behave or do. Is they have their own free will. They decide to do things, and so.
true.
But it's hard to let go because you care about them. It's hard to let go of that because you don't want them to hurt themselves purposely. And I deal with this a lot with family members who of people who are addicted to some sort of substance.
Yeah.
right? They feel constantly like I need to fix this, I
Be
need to control this, or I need
responsible.
to.
Yes.
They feel overly responsible, and then like if it goes
Hmm.
well, they're great, they're happy, life's great. Things
Yep.
don't go well, they like
Stuff.
they really take it personal. Like, what did I do to fail? Why can't I fix this?
I think you're making a really important distinction there, and it comes back to that self-awareness. And there could be people on the other sides of the spectrum. There could be people with personality really caring for others. And when the empathy and care is just like any strength, when it's too much, it can be sabotaging us, our
Yeah.
relationships. When that responsibility is too much responsibility, it also takes away that responsibility, that ownership from the other person. When they're
Right.
just used to that you're always take care of everything for them, they'll never be really forced to learn that and take that ownership for their own health
Mhm.
and really get that motivation internal rather than
Yeah.
always external,
Yep.
which takes a lot of your energy if you are on that side, let's say. So it's also noticing what am I really responsible? What is my responsibility for versus what they are responsible for?
Yep.
And what can we change? Can we change somebody else? No, unfortunately not. We can
Yeah.
influence, but just how sometimes difficult it is to change ourselves, our own habits.
Right.
So
Right.
how can I balance the care for myself? Maybe refocusing back on what can I control? I can control myself. I cannot control the other person. Um,
Yep.
I can control my communication, but I cannot control them. So it could be other spectrum of the people that are really more trying to be safe by controlling. That also is
Yep.
not ideal for the relationship. Imagine your partner constantly telling you what to do or not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like, yeah, we're partners, right? In a relationship.
Mm.
I'm not your parents. You're not my parents. Like that's not a great dynamic to have either. If one of us
Yeah.
feels like a parent and like constantly managing the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really looking at where's the boundary of responsibility? Where's my responsibility? Where's theirs responsibility?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Anything else that we would add here?
No, I think it's, behavior change is hard, right? Whether you
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about this, whether you want to talk about the way they dress, any unhealthy habit they do,
Mm-hmm.
smoking, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I think it comes back down to just what your attitude of let's go in there with care and love. I'm just doing this. I want to have the conversation, just keeping the communication open,
Mm-hmm.
having it with a sense of I just want to care for you. I just want the best for you. And then if you want to be more strategic, just bringing up, starting to plant those seeds of doubt
Mm-hmm.
of they may see nothing, no bad reason for it, or they may not see any negative outcome because of whatever they're doing. Just subtly pointing out whenever there is those negative outcomes because of it, not even connecting it for them, but just starting to point out like, you know, you're getting more out of breath when you're playing with the kids. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if additional part could be also being clear about your boundaries. Let's say their behavior is impacting you.
Yeah.
When you are trying to really stay healthy and they're eating the unhealthy when you have family dinner, let's say they bring the chips.
Yep.
And it's really hard for you to resist because you're trying to change your own habit and it
Right. Right.
is
Right. Right.
hard. So really having a boundary in case, I don't know, for example, I will eat with you only when you don't have these foods. If you
Yeah.
do, because I really want to protect my own health, I'm just gonna eat in the next room. I don't know what would be the
Mm.
specific boundary for you. It's
Right.
just
Right.
an idea that came up for me. Or let's go
Yeah.
to restaurants only when they also have healthy options for me.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's fair. Whether it's great to set your own boundaries and say, listen, you're right. I can't you want to eat like that, that's on you. Can you
Yeah.
just help me out? I want to be healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And find a way how it could be a collaboration, a teamwork.
Yeah, I like that. So that's great. So good. So yeah, it's not easy. I applaud anybody having this conversation because it's behavior change is hard,
Mm.
especially in a relationship, depending on your communication level. So Yeah, if you've had this conversation, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what does that conversation sound like? What does the conversation feel like? What worked, what didn't work? So let us know in the comments.
Yeah. And share wins. If it went well, let us know what happened. Celebrate
Yeah,
with us so your story can inspire also other people to have their own conversations.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chris, for another episode.
Always a pleasure.
Same
Love being
here.
here.
Me too. And more to come. I'm excited for our next episode and interviews with our guests. So stay tuned.
Awesome. See you next week, Lucy.
See you next week.